Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobby Capucci, and this is a morning update. We've been talking about a lot of different things, and, the topic on everybody's mind is the coronavirus. Well, we have our own virus we're going to discuss on this podcast today, and that virus is Ghislaine Maxwell. There's a new article out in the Times, and the headline is, Jeffrey Epstein's ex, Ghislaine Maxwell, sues his estate for legal fees. Stop. Pause. What? So Ghislaine Maxwell is suing Jeffrey Epstein's estate for legal fees because she says that Epstein said he had promised to pay her legal fees for claims brought against her by his accusers. All right, this article was written by Matthew Goldstein, and it legitimately came out 30 minutes ago. The whereabouts of Ghislaine Maxwell, the former girlfriend and longtime associate, co-conspirator of Jeffrey Epstein, has been largely a mystery since the registered sex offender, pedophile, was arrested last summer on sex trafficking charges. Not off to a great start here in the New York Times, what they're wording. His associate, sex trafficking charges. How about pedophile, okay? That's what he is. Just call him that, Mr. Goldstein. It's okay. He's not going to come back from the grave and sue you or anything like that. The guy is a pedophile, all right? But Miss Maxwell has surfaced with a lawsuit against Mr. Epstein's estate, saying the financier, pedophile, who died last year, had promised to pay her legal fees for any claims from the dozens of women who say he helped him recruit them to give him massages when they were teenagers. Okay, let's take a look here. Ghislaine Maxwell again is angling to get herself out ahead of this. Again, she's angling to have Jeffrey Epstein's money protect her. And I think this is significant because she wouldn't be making this move if the pressure wasn't on her. And I said it once and I'll say it again. Now that Epstein is dead, these gals don't have access to the money that they had when Epstein was alive. So they don't have the legal representation that they would have had if old Jeff was still alive here, right? Because Epstein would have brought in the big guns. He could have afforded to bring in whoever he wanted to defend them, and he would have left no rock unturned considering they held the keys to the kingdom, and he knows that if any of these girls would have been brought before an interrogator, they would have spilled the beans, and Epstein knew that. That's why they all had such generous compensation packages. That's why they were all taken care of the way they were. And that's why they were all protected legally under that immunity deal. Miss Maxwell brought her suit in Superior Court in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where Mr. Epstein's estate is being probated. The suit was filed on Friday, but not docketed until late Tuesday. She has some nerve. Ghislaine Maxwell has some effing nerve. So not only was she involved in the abuse of these girls, right? Now she thinks that she's entitled to some of Jeffrey Epstein's money to defend herself against these allegations by these girls with the money from the estate that these gals, the survivors, are entitled to. So basically she's trying to F them twice. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what Ghislaine Maxwell is up to and what she thinks she'll get away with. Does she really think that she's not going to be dragged over the coals for this? Does she really think that she wasn't going to be put on blast on podcasts around the world over this? Give me a break with this lady. The lawsuit was a rare public movement by Miss Maxwell, who has kept a low profile since Mr. Epstein's death last August in federal custody. She remains a central figure in the investigation by federal prosecutors in Manhattan who are looking into associates of Mr. Epstein. Investigators are trying to determine who may have assisted him in recruiting young girls and women to be sexually abused and who may have moved money to further his efforts. That's a significant piece there too, huh? Who moved his money? Well, let's start with Jess Staley. How about that? How much money did Glenn Dubin move for him? How much money did Les Wexner move for him? All right, if we're talking about who's moving money, then we're going to have to really get down in the weeds, right? And we're going to have to really talk about who's moving money because, as you all know, I totally 100% believe that there was a ton of money laundering going on here. And you see it by the transaction history. You see it by these fake banks that he popped up in the Virgin Islands. And you just see it by the way things are unfolding when it comes to his finances. Miss Maxwell, whose father was the late British media mogul Robert Maxwell, has hired a team of lawyers from New York, Colorado, and California to monitor the ongoing criminal investigation and defend her in lawsuits filed by Mr. Epstein's accusers. My question is this: where is Ghislaine getting all of this money? If any of this money came from Jeffrey Epstein, how does she still have access to it? If it was you or I, and we were involved in some sort of criminal enterprise, all of our funds would be frozen. Every last dollar would be frozen. They'd have forensic accountants on it. They'd be all over it, folks, all right? But yet, Ghislaine Maxwell is still somehow accessing pools and pools of money to defend herself from this onslaught of lawsuits. Where is the money coming from? Who is protecting her? Who is giving her these resources? And the question is, why are they doing it? In her complaint, Miss Maxwell, 58, alludes to the once intimate relationship she had with Mr. Epstein, describing herself as a longtime employee who formed a legal and special relationship with him. But the complaint said Miss Maxwell had no involvement in or knowledge of Epstein's alleged misconduct. That is such bullshit. That is such bullshit. All right? And the investigators are still looking at evidence to see if Ghislaine Maxwell was involved. What does that even mean? Just go ahead and read the Filthy Rich book, and you'll see just how involved Ghislaine Maxwell was. Just talk to any of these survivors, and you'll see just how involved Ghislaine Maxwell was. What do you mean you're still trying to compile evidence? Berman is just a joke at this point. Quit dragging your feet, sir, and do your job. The suit says she has incurred significant legal fees, personal security costs, and other expenses. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your legal fees or your personal expenses. Nobody cares about any of it. We want you arrested, okay, Ghislaine Maxwell? We all think you're guilty. That's all of our opinions, okay? We think you're as guilty as it comes. We also think that you were the brains behind the operation, all right? And you have some gall trying to go after some of this money here and another slap in the face to the survivors. How dare you? Because of her work for a number of Mr. Epstein's businesses from 1999 to 2006. Among those tasks, the lawsuit said, was managing Mr. Epstein's homes in the Virgin Islands, New York, Paris, Florida, and New Mexico. The suit says she also worked for his COUQ Foundation. She wasn't just the house manager, folks. That's a bunch of bullshit. Absolute and utter bullshit, okay? She was the underboss, the brains behind the operation. She was the one that was the vehicle to get this all started. Don't forget that, folks. And don't let these articles ever sway your opinion of that, right? This broad, this lady, this piece of shit needs to be arrested ASAP. The lawsuit says that before Mr. Epstein died, he said he would pay her legal fees in connection with other lawsuits that listed her as a defendant. According to the complaint, Miss Maxwell sent the estate a letter in November demanding indemnification for all those costs, citing promises Mr. Epstein had made in writing and verbally about supporting her financially. Those commitments, the suit said, have not been honored. Well, since we're at it, Jeffrey Epstein also told me that he wanted to give Virginia Roberts $50 million. How about that? That's what he told me. That's last time I talked to old Jeff, he said $50 million for Virginia Roberts, easy peasy. And he also said he wanted to give Maria Farmer $50 million. So let's bring that into a suit too, all right? How ridiculous. How utterly ridiculous for Ghislaine Maxwell to run around and act like, oh, well, Jeffrey and I had a conversation where he said he'd be paying my legal fees. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Nobody believes you. That money isn't for you to touch. That money's going to these survivors. You're not getting 1 cent, Ghislaine. All you're getting is a one-way trip to a jail cell, okay? Maybe you and your friend Sarah Kellen Vickers will be at the same facility, and you guys can have nice little chats in the yard. The lawsuit was filed by lawyers from the firm of Quintaros, Prieto, Wood, and Boyer, which has an office in the Virgin Islands. Messages left at the office on Wednesday morning were not immediately returned. An attorney for Mr. Epstein's estate did not immediately return messages seeking comment. They never do. None of these attorneys ever want to comment, right? They're all, they have big loud mouths when they want to run to the papers, but they never want to answer any hard questions, any pointed questions. All they want to do is toss their narrative out there and hope that it catches and it takes with the mainstream media. That's what these lawyers like to do. Miss Maxwell and Mr. Epstein largely parted ways after he pleaded guilty in Florida in 2008 to a charge of soliciting prostitution from an underage girl. What? How does this author know that? Talk about carrying water for Maxwell. Miss Maxwell and Mr. Epstein largely parted ways after he pleaded guilty in Florida in 2008. Survey says wrong. They were still in contact, just like she was still in contact with the prince. And you see, folks, this is why I have a problem with the New York Times. This is why I have a problem with the New York Times. The reporting is shoddy at best, all right? That conviction required him to register as a sex offender. Mr. Epstein's estate, valued at $600 million before the big stock market sell-off, $631 million, again, another inaccuracy in this article. Before the big stock market sell-off prompted by concern over the coronavirus is the subject of litigation across multiple fronts. Nearly 36 women have brought claims against the estate, saying they were sexually abused by Mr. Epstein as teenagers at his residences in New York, the Virgin Islands, and New Mexico. And let's not forget London. Let's not forget France. Look, you see, folks, again, I don't mean to dive into this way, but this is why I do these daily drops and these morning updates and read these articles. That way we can read between the lines, right? And we can look at what's going on here. And, you know, these articles leave a lot out most of the time, and they just scratch the surface. So if you weren't aware of the case and you didn't know what was going on with the Jeffrey Epstein situation, there is a bunch of inaccuracies in this article that you would be taking as fact, and then you would be going to spread those to your friends if you were interested in this. You see the problem with the media? This is the problem with the media, right here, right in front of our face. Many of the women have filed claims and related lawsuits anonymously. In some of those lawsuits, Miss Maxwell has been named as either a co-defendant or someone who assisted Mr. Epstein in the abuse. Well, duh, that's exactly what she was. She wasn't a house manager, she isn't a victim, and she doesn't deserve 1 single cent of this money to put towards her criminal defense. The executors of Mr. Epstein's will are seeking to establish a restitution program funded by the estate's assets to provide financial relief to victims without litigation. But the creation of the fund has been delayed by actions taken by the Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands, who has said she wants to make sure that victims have a voice in the process. Oh yeah, that's what she means. That's what she wants. That's all Denise George cares about. She doesn't want the funds from the islands or anything like that. It's all about the survivors. The estate has tapped Kenneth R. Feinberg, one of the nation's best-known administrators of restitution funds, and Jordana Feldman, a lawyer who worked closely with Mr. Feinberg on the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund to oversee payments to Mr. Epstein's victims. Denise George, the Attorney General for the Virgin Islands, said in a recent interview that she does not object to a restitution fund being created, but she wants the survivors to be able to choose a fund administrator along with the administrators chosen by the estate. That's a good thing. I said that as well. I would like an independent arbiter to be involved in this. I want somebody who has no connections to Jeffrey Epstein or his buddies or his lawyers or anyone around him to be involved in this. But I also want that person to say to Denise George, you're not getting 1 single shiny dime. We have always had the position that the survivors have to be properly compensated, Ms. George said, but there has always been the concern that victims didn't have part in picking the administrator. So, we're at a point now, folks, where Ghislaine Maxwell and Denise George are both trying to siphon money off of this trust. Right? Ghislaine Maxwell is saying, in her crazy-ass reality, whatever reality that she's living in, she believes that she deserves some of the money from the estate to defend her from the accusers who are the ones who are really entitled to that money. So she's trying to do the double whammy on these survivors, and it's disgusting. It makes me sick to even read that article. This woman needs to be stopped. She needs to be pulled out of whatever hole she's hiding in, and she needs to be dragged before the justice of the world, all right? Because enough is enough. Enough is enough with Ghislaine Maxwell, folks. How many times are we going to hear about her being involved in this case, and another story from one of the survivors about how she was abused by Maxwell as well as Epstein. How many more of these stories do we have to hear before Berman stops dragging his feet and steps up to the plate? I hope it's soon. I really hope it's soon, because the day that she is arrested, I already told you, we're popping bottles on this podcast. I don't even drink, but we are popping bottles on this podcast the day that this lady gets arrested. And it's coming. I'm telling you folks, 2020, this is the year. This is the year that the predator turns into the prey. I've been saying it for a while now, but I truly believe it. We're only in March, and look where we're at. Look at the movement in this case. Look at the dominoes that are falling. And look at the pressure that is being put on these people every single day by all of you awesome people out there in the audience that are listening. All of you that search out this content, that search out other bits of content, that keep the pressure on social media. It's because of you that we are where we are right now. And all I could say is keep it up, folks. Keep it up. We are going to see justice in this case. All right, everybody, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. Also, happy birthday to Jocelyn. Hope you're having a fantastic birthday, and I hope that your whole entire week is amazing, because that is exactly what you deserve. All right, everybody, I will be back later on with some more content for you from my lockdown situation here in the lovely Las Vegas, Nevada.